We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Mike Renner back in studio, coming off a bonus mailbag. Everyone loved that. We didn't even tease it, by the way. People just dropped that on their feeds. A little secret bonus. And I know you wanted to open the podcast today because it's a special day. You're going on a date with a 20-year-old?
Nope, not 20.
21?
Not 21.
22-year-old soccer player.
Okay, we don't have to get too deep into
it. Sorry. We're going on a date.
Going on a date today in honor of me getting myself back out there. Mm-hmm. I'm going to, tell a story about some of my early dating experiences, because we've heard your dating stories, and they're usually the people you're going on dates with fucking up.
Yeah.
My dating experiences are me fucking up. And so that's why I can't tell a lot of them, because some of them are a little more or less PG-13.
Gotcha.
Shall we say. But this one's tellable. This one's back in my younger years, fresh out of college, back when I'm living in Chicago at the time, like downtown Chicago, right next to Millennium Park. And I used to have fairly bad social anxiety before, like dates, interviews, presentations, stuff like that. So I would drink some alcohol. Very healthy habit, So I would probably usually like 3 or 4 Miller Lights. But on this day, it's a Saturday brunch day. And I don't really feel like pounding, 4 Miller Lights at 11 a.m. before I'm going. So I go down to the CVS below my place and I grab a Four Loko Gold. And that was back in my Four Loko
Isn't
days.
this another story that comes with the Four Loko?
I was going to say, back in the day, I used to drink Four Lokos a lot.
You're a fucking sick bastard.
Again, I got to ask the question, is this the new or old formula?
This is the new formula. So it did not have this was 20...
Wait, there's an old formula?
The original OG formula had over 500 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah, it got banned because I think people were like dropping dead.
Yeah, so that was
seriously.
We're going to get into this. They could have just dropped the caffeine to a normal range and probably sold, but they had to take caffeine out altogether. So these don't have caffeine anymore. But it was 14% alcohol and 24 ounces. And so that's around 6 to 7 drinks. I drink it before this date. And as you know, I have a fairly high alcohol tolerance, and it takes me a while to act drunk. Like, you can't tell that I'm drunk after like 10, 12 beers. And so I go on this date. It's at like noon. On the date, I have, I think, 2 more mimosas, 4 more Miller Lights. And so by the end of it, pretty hot. Like, and I think it goes well. She's a very nice girl. She also went to Notre Dame. Actually, I didn't even know her there, but also went to Notre Dame. Goes really well, but then after that, people were back at my place playing beer die, and so after that, I just keep rolling into Saturday, and I'm drinking still.
Oh wow! Because it was a lunch date, I forgot.
Yeah, it was a lunch date, and so I'm drinking the rest of the day. Drank a lot by the end. Wake up the next day, I don't remember a single thing I talked about in this date.
Oh no!
We had been texting after that, like things have been going well, but I don't remember details about her at all. Like the things she told me, what she does for work, all of this stuff at this point. And so I'm too embarrassed to even respond to her because I can't go on another date because I have to ask her every single thing that I just asked her on the first one. She didn't know that I was like hammered. She had like 2 drinks at lunch. And so I told her I couldn't see her again.
Dude, that's incredible. I've never even dipped my toes in those waters. No, I don't think I've ever like pre-gamed a date like that. Social anxiety hits real.
No, back when I had pretty bad social anxiety, it was not fun to I had to do that, or else the date would go even worse.
We're gonna need another dating story on the Thursday episode after this one.
Yeah, well, no Four Loko tonight.
Don't do a Four Loko.
I'll be sober rolling.
I can't believe you're like old formula or new formula. I didn't even know there was a thing there. I guess I got
old formula would have been psychotic.
I was never in the Four Loko game.
It was probably before you were even like the old formula went away in maybe 2010.
Oh, okay. So. I graduated high school in 2012.
Okay.
For tonight, Do you know if her parents are doctors? Are you hoping for that? Any fingers crossed?
I mean, one hope.
All right, let's get into the podcast here. I was going to tell a story about my mom because we went and had pictures of margaritas last night, and she opened up, but I'll save it for Thursday. Okay. She told me some of her stories about stealing cars I never heard before. It was fantastic. They're fantastic. I'll tell you that. I'll tell it on the Thursday episode. Let's get into this one here. We have the interviews at the back end of the podcast. Obviously, Dyami Brown and Osa Odigihizuwa of UCLA coming on. But to start, going to do the same thing we did for the AFC teams on Monday, for the NFC teams on Wednesday. Look at what they have in cap space, some cut candidates, all that stuff as we prepare for what should be an absolutely insane, I'm going away from bonkers, insane offseason.
Oh, wait, what did we decide on? Is insane what we decide on? No, absurd was your absurd, bonkers, farcical.
I'm going
It should be today. Farcical.
It's not going to be. All right, Packers, your Packers. They're right now projected at minus $11.5 million in projected cap space. Free agents they could lose a really talented center in Corey Linsley, Kevin King, who, if you don't remember, did not have a good postseason. We'll leave it at that. Aaron Jones,
How could you not?
Who reportedly is drawing interest from the Miami Dolphins and could see over $15 million a year on average on a new contract. And then the big dog, former UCLA tight end Marcedes Lewis, who is still kicking around the league. He's also on PFF's list of the top 200 free agents. Marcedes Lewis is still a top 200 free agent this offseason, which is incredible. You can check out that full list on PFF.com. Let's start with Corey Linsley. Is this a priority re-sign for the Packers?
I don't think so. I mean, that's what they did last year in the draft with all the late round picks that they went along the offensive line there with their six. I think they drafted 3 interior offensive linemen in rounds 5, 6, and 7 last year. Like that was because they knew I think Corey Linsley was going to be on his way out this year because $11.5 million over the cap already. You're going to have to make plays just to get under, you know? And so I'm not sure there'll be major players unless someone goes ring chasing. Is the biggest thing here. And the Aaron Jones, that ship is all been sailed. I think a lot of teams are going to be praying. So these projected cap space numbers are based on $180.5 million cap. Teams are praying that the NFL gets to like 187, 188, because that'll be so much more flexibility in terms of a lot of these teams that are right up against it that just aren't going to be players at all. That's one guy that they can add to the roster. And a lot of teams, that's a big addition if you can get one guy in there. And so I think a lot of teams are going to be praying, the Green Bay Packers being certainly one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Aaron Jones honestly goes elsewhere. I don't expect, with the investment they made in AJ Dillon a year ago with the second round pick, I think they want to keep him as is it Jamal Williams also a free agent?
Yes, Jamal Williams is, but I didn't put him on there. It's not as key. But man, Aaron Jones going from Green Bay's offensive line to the Dolphins offensive line could be
a disaster.
A bit of a rude awakening.
A disaster.
Yeah.
I don't think that they should be spending big at the running back position. That is a dangerous game to play. You saw it in the same division with the Jets when they went and grabbed Le'Veon Bell. I think that's a different story. Aaron Jones maybe a bit in his prime, more in his prime than Bell was, but still paying big for running backs, as awesome as they are, as cool as the sombrero is, as cool as the sunglasses are, and the marketing around that is tough. It's a tough bite to overcome. And I know if you're like the Jags, the Dolphins, or even the Colts, you're in this position with so much cap space that you can maybe make a luxury signing like an Aaron Jones. But in our humble opinion, or my humble opinion at least, it's probably a contract situation you want to avoid. Some cap casualties or some guys they could cut to get under this number. They already cut Christian Kirksey and Rick Wagner. They can cut Zadarius Smith for $12 million savings, Preston Smith for $8 million in savings, Billy Turner for $4 million, and then Dylan Lowry for $3.3.
Dean Lowry.
Who do you think that? What?
Dean
Dylan?
Lowry.
Or Dean Lowry. I don't know what is going on. I can't read today. But do you think they actually cut the Smith brothers? I know they're not brothers, but they call them the Smith brothers.
Preston, yes. I don't see how you can justify 3 edge rushers or paying big money to 3 edge rushers with how kind of average Preston Smith was last year. It's just not, he's not bringing that much value to the table to where that $8 million. You got to make cuts somewhere. If you're $11.5 million over the cap, someone's got to go. Now, Zadarius is different. Zadarius, you could maybe flip in a trade piece, and that's how you recoup some value there. But I could see both of them not being Packers next year, as we said on, I think, the Mailbag podcast.
So how do they get over the hump? What's the plan? What do they use their first round pick on at 29, and how should they approach free agency? Because I know a lot of Green Bay Packers fans want them to go get on this blue chip wide receiver class in free agency. No. They want them to go get a Robinson, a Galladay, a Fuller, or whatever.
Fuller's the only one because of the PED suspension, because of his injury history, that maybe. if he's going to take
I'd love that fit. I'd love that.
And it would be, and if he goes 1 year deal, wants to prove he's healthy, wants to prove he can, is away from that suspension. If you're going to go somewhere to put up big numbers, it would be Green Bay. That would be an ideal situation for you to put up big numbers. So I can see that's the only way I could see one of these wide receivers in the class going to Green Bay. Otherwise, I think your first, second rounder looks like it should be a wide receiver at this point. Don't pull a Saints with Alvin Kamara and try to kick the can with Aaron Jones and say, hey, we'll push that. We'll give him a real small salary this year, a small cap hit this year, and big money in the future. Don't do that at the running back position. Do not do that. The Saints probably going to be regretting it for a couple of years. And then, like I said, pray for ring chasers, J.J. Watt, Marvin Jones, something like that. Guys towards the end of their career who will take cheap. I don't know if that's realistic, if that's people are going to actually do that this year, but pray for it.
I mean, Marvin Jones, that's a name you should say with your chest. I like that as a piece for them in the offseason.
And he even said, I think, he said he's at the point in his career, he's already signed his big money deal that he wants a ring.
I think that's a good fit, honestly.
Him and A.J. Green want to play together.
Oh, we have Marvin Jones, A.J. Green, Devontae Adams, maybe Will Fuller. Let's build a dynasty in Green Bay, a 1-year dynasty. Anyway,
we won't go there.
Chicago Bears. Producer Mike Quinn trying to fit a Bengal into every conversation. You'd love to see it. Chicago Bears projected right now at minus $2.5 million in cap space. Soon to be free agents are Mitch Trubisky, Allen Robinson, Jermaine Ifedi, Tashawn Gibson. Some cap casualties that they could potentially move on from to save some money here. Jimmy Graham at $7 million, who had that sick ass touchdown grab and then just left. I don't know if he's ever coming back. And that actually helped me cover a teaser leg, which was huge for me. Bobby Massey, $5.4 million. Charles Leno at $6.2 million. Kyle Fuller, I think that's an interesting one. One of the better outside corners, in my opinion, in the NFL. And then and they'd save $11 million with him. And then Akeem Hicks at $10.5. Do you think they start cutting loose some of these stars like Hicks and Fuller?
Well, that's the thing about Kyle Fuller's cap hit this year is $20 million.
Oh my God.
That contract is coming back in full force right now with the kind of low hits early on and then escalators to where, man, he's at his best, worth that kind of money, but we haven't seen his best in 3 years now. And so maybe.
What about a Bears favorite, Akeem Hicks?
If you got to get money elsewhere, maybe. Akeem Hicks is also 32, probably coming off his worst season in like 3 or 4 years, is on the downslope of his career. That's probably a more likely, if I'm going to save money somewhere, would be Akeem Hicks. The Jimmy Graham one's the obvious one. That one's, you got to get rid of Jimmy Graham. You got too many tight ends there as to begin with, and he's not a difference maker. I mean, he is not at this point in his career a difference maker at the tight end position. So that one's that. They're not going to be big players, I don't think. They're not going to re-sign Allen Robinson. They're not going to be shelling out big money for a quarterback. That's not where they are. But I think a Jameis Winston could make a lot of sense. If you are going to go the free agent route, I think they're going to have to at this point. You're not going to be – quarterback's not coming in there and taking you to the playoffs in this rookie class where you're drafting in the 20s there. So –
do you think that's what Matt Nagy wants, though? Does he want a Jameis Winston, Cam Newton
I don't think
type?
anyone wants a Jameis Winston.
No, but I think there are some offenses where Jameis Winston can have some success. Yeah. But I think Nagy's offense, ideally, is built around a facilitator, built around a quarterback that's consistently accurate with the football. A Jimmy G, a Derek Carr, Kirk
Jimmy
Cousins
G is not
type.
consistently accurate.
No,
I know what you mean.
But you get what I'm saying, throwing underneath and being on time, those types of things.
Jameis throws with good timing. I just think Jameis has the higher reward possibilities. Derek Carr, you're gonna have to give up a lot for him. I wouldn't be giving up. I'm not mortgaging the future this offseason. It's the biggest thing I would do. Now, they might, because Ryan Pace needs to save his job.
That's what I'm saying. What's the point? Jameis isn't taking them to the playoffs or deep in the postseason either.
We could. They made the playoffs this past year with Mr. Trubisky and Nick Foles.
They lose Allen Robinson. They lose Bobby Massey potentially.
I mean, was their passing game good last year though with Allen Robinson?
No.
Okay.
And it's not. It's going to be worse.
But I mean, it might not be worse because Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky are not good.
Here's my take. This seems like your projected plan here seems like a middling plan. Let's continue to be a middling team.
I'm trying to save his job without.
And this ain't it. This isn't saving anybody's job. This is getting them drafting in the same spot again next year.
Their defense is still good enough to get them to the playoffs with this.
They lose Kyle Fuller, Akeem Hicks.
Well, under the plan, it would be I'd say Jimmy Graham, Akeem Hicks, Jameis.
Okay.
And then maybe a Curtis Samuel or.
Here's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
You either need to go all in and go and keep some of these talented players like a Kyle Fuller, whatever. Go get Derek Carr and try and shoot the moon with a legitimate quarterback.
How is Derek Carr is not shooting the moon? That was my
I think their offense is better with Derek Carr than with Jameis Winston. Absolutely. Matt Nagy's offense is better with Derek Carr than it is Jameis Winston.
But again, is it how good is your offense though with Derek Carr? Derek Carr is more reliant on his weapons than Jameis Winston is.
That's true. That's true. That's why any of these plans suck. I think they should just tear it all down. Cut Fuller, Hicks, Graham.
But that's my thing. It's like you're not in a position to tear it all down.
Because you're trying to save your job.
You're good enough to win. But you also don't want to mortgage the future if you're the Chicago Bears. You don't want to give up draft capital wholesale. That's what you don't want to do. So
this is such a bad situation for Bears fans, honestly.
It's not that. I mean, like, there are worse. We're going to get to some worse situations.
Fair.
Is J.J. Watt going to Chicago?
No.
He lives there? His wife plays there?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's feasible.
All right, let's get off the Bears.
Let's hang out.
Minnesota Vikings, right now projected minus $9.4 million in projected cap space. Will likely lose, free safety Anthony Harris this offseason if they don't give him the tag again, right? Wasn't he playing on the tag this past year? Dakota Dozier, Eric Wilson, Jaleel Johnson, all potential free agents they could lose.
Isn't it just Dozier?
No, it's Dozier.
Is it?
It's Dozier. I don't know, but I kind of like Dozier better. Cut candidates, Riley Reif at $11.8 million, Kyle Rudolph at $5 million. I don't think they cut Rudolph. Rudolph is like Minnesota, like they love the guy.
They drafted.
They love Rudolph. It's more likely they restructure it than they do cut him. I think Kyle Rudolph is embedded in that Vikings organization.
I will bet you Kyle Rudolph's gone. What was his thing? He said they were talking about cutting him, and he said no, he wants a new deal.
Oh, really?
It was just like no, I need a new deal.
Fair enough.
That was a power move by him to say we're going to cut you. No, I want a new deal. But I think he's gone because they have to. Another team has to create space.
Yeah,
$9.5 million over. You got to do something. They could be. The more I look at this roster, the more I'm on board with the Cousins flipping. And people are saying, you might not get much back for Cousins. By all means, flip them for whatever the hell you can get at this point because it's not. There's just not a lot of avenues to improving this roster at this point. And I think where you are at 14 overall, you're in a position where you can trade up. And if you get that draft capital from Cousins, you can be a player in this quarterback class, maybe. And even if you're not, you'll be a player in the 2022 quarterback class if you do trade Kirk Cousins. Because right now you are in the dreaded purgatory.
Yeah.
You are in 8-8 purgatory. That is where you are as a Minnesota Vikings franchise. You are in the 7-9 to 9-7. This is not a roster that's going to swing wildly one way or the other from that gap. So at that point, and that's kind of where Kirk Cousins gets you, unfortunately, with this roster, because there's no real way to fix this offensive line. The only way to fix this offensive line is to cut Riley Reif, one of your better offensive linemen.
Yeah, that's tough. So do you think the best case scenario for the Vikings is to move on from Kirk Cousins?
The more I looked at it, I didn't think it was necessarily the most realistic, but man, with his $45 million impending cap hit in 2022, yes. You're not going to win in 2022 with a $45 million cap hit at quarterback if that quarterback's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, that's tough, man. That's another. Now, this entire NFC North situation is kind of rough outside of obviously Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, but like Bears are in a bad spot, Vikings are in a bad spot, and then Lions could be getting number 1 overall pick next year.
Well, I was going to say, you talked about the Bears being in a bad spot. I think the Vikings and the Lions are in worse sort of positions roster-wise.
Wow. All right, so let's get to the Lions then. Minus $8.4 million right now in projected cap space. They're likely going to tag and keep Kenny Galladay or tag and trade Kenny Galladay, Daron Harmon, Marvin Jones, Romeo Okwara, Everson Griffin, Danny Amendola, Gerard Davis. All those guys are free agents. All those guys could be leaving Detroit this offseason. Some cap casualties to get under the cap right now. Again, minus $8.4 million in projected space. Desmond Trufant at 6.2, Justin Coleman at 4.9, Nick Williams at 4.65, Chase Daniel at 2.3, Jesse James at 2.1, and then Danny Shelton at $4 million.
So I got to be honest here. I'm not proud of this, and and it didn't used to happen when I was actually like doing NFL full time and actually grading games and whatnot. But I had to look up who Nick Williams was. I did not know. He is in his 7th year in the NFL. Had never played more than 500 snaps until 2019. Went to Samford, and they gave him 2 years. I think like $6 million a year. After 1 year with the Bears. And he's not an impact player. Did not grade well this past year at defensive tackle. So that one, wild to me that I had to still look a guy up who's going to make over $5 million this year. Now, some of that's on me. A little embarrassing, but I'm sure some of our listeners are not.
If that's not a microcosm of the entire situation in Detroit.
And that's what I'm saying. How you are this bad of a roster and you're $8.4 million.
That's the most stunning figure on the thing.
It's kind of insane.
Yeah.
So you got to. This is a reset button off season. Oh, this is going to be a reset button off season for a lot of teams. I think we're going to see a lot of bottom feeders next year, sadly, because that's just the way the cap sort of
sounds like my Tinder matches, honestly. But
sounds like that's just your bias.
That's my bottom feeders only. I do think that I think that's the craziest thing about this whole review or preview of the Lions offseason is that they have a very bad roster, will be in the running for a top 3 pick next year, and are still minus $8.4 million over the cap.
Yeah.
They're going to have to move on from Trufant, Coleman, this guy that you don't even know, Nick Williams. Like, they're going to have to move on from some talent, and then they're also might not be able to retain a lot of these guys like Galladay, like Jones, all that stuff. Like, wouldn't they not be better off with the state of this roster for tag and trade Kenny Galladay to continue to allocate picks and really reset here? Or do you think they should keep Galladay?
I have no problem with giving Galladay an extension. He's a very good wide receiver.
Yeah,
he's a nice
of course.
building block going forward. Now, could the picks help? Sure. So it's whatever you really want to do with Kenny Galladay. I'm not going to hate, but you got to take him. Like, that's your one asset this offseason. You gotta do something with him.
You're not getting nothing for him.
Exactly. So, but it is a nice offseason to hit reset. Like, I'm not giving Duran Harmon a 2-year deal. I'm not trying to re-sign Marvin Jones. Like, that's not going to do anything for you. Let those guys, let any of that money walk out the building. Don't try to plug holes in free agency. This is not the year to plug holes in free agency.
I don't think they have the horses to do it either, to be fair.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Will be an interesting situation for the NFC North. Let's jump now to the NFC South and the reigning Super Bowl champions. They're in a better cap situation than even the Detroit Lions with the best roster in football. Or obviously not the best roster, but maybe. I mean, this past year, would you say the Tampa Bay?
Yeah, probably. The most complete roster.
So they're still $13.4 million over the cap. Obviously, that includes losing a lot of their big guys. So Lavonte David, Shaq Barrett, Rob Gronkowski, Ndamukong Suh, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, and Playoff Lenny, or Lombardi Lenny, I think is what he goes by now. All of those guys were key contributors to this Super Bowl run.
Yeah, they were all, Lenny, whatever.
Maybe not Ndamukong Suh either. I don't think he was all that impressive.
Yeah, but Godwin, Brown, Gronk, Barrett, David, that's a lot walking out the door, possibly.
And I think that's what makes their cap casualties so important too, because I've mentioned before that Donovan Smith they could get out of with zero dead cap and save $14.25 million if they cut him. And I know he's coming off a career high season from a PFF grade standpoint, but if you want to try and bring back a David, a Godwin, a Barrett, you're going to need to make some moves. And I think that move right there is a potentially good one.
Well, I think what you do is you give him an extension because last year was deal. It's a 3-year deal. This last year, you give him 2 more years onto it and then kind of kick some money
of the
from
money
this
down
year into the next 2 years is what I would do because he's still 27. The fact that he just played his best year. You could do better than Donovan Smith, but you're not going to if you cut him.
Yeah.
You're not going to go find a guy on the street.
True, because cutting him does not help them bring back offensive line talent.
You're trying to win again. You're not trying to win 2 years from now, sadly, because that's your if Tom Brady's still playing 2 years from now, maybe. But it's going to be difficult to find a quarterback after Tom Brady at this point with your roster. So I think that's what you do with Donovan Smith, and that'll give you some cap space for this year. I'd cut the tight ends, man. Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, those aren't moving the needle for me. That's $6 million that you could save for both of those guys. So then you're up to somewhere in the neighborhood.
That is too much money to be invested in the tight end position for 2 guys that I think you could replace their production with the guy in the draft on day 2, day 3.
You're somewhere in the neighborhood of $30+ million in cap space then at that point. You can make plays on Lavonte, Shaq Barrett, probably not Godwin. Of all those guys, Suh might retire. Gronk, you could probably get back for cheap because I don't know if you'd want to play with anywhere else but Brady. Antonio Brown may be similar. You could probably get back for cheap. But Chris Godwin's the one who I don't think he's taking hometown discount, let's run it back sort of thing. I think he's the guy who's going to walk in free agency. Do you tag him to tag trade? I don't know exactly who I'm tagging of this bunch. Not Shaq Barrett again because it would be so expensive. But I'm trying to bring back of those bunch, Shaq Barrett, Lavonte David. That's going to get me another Super Bowl. That's my best path.
Do you think Lombardi Lenny, someone breaks the bank for Lombardi Lenny? How funny would that be? If he doesn't go back with the Bucs and some team signs him to a $10 million deal, that would be incredible. The Jags no, not the Jags. Sorry. As much as I want the Allen Robinson reunion, there's not going to be a Lombardi Lenny reunion in Jacksonville. I'm sorry. I don't think that we see that. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man, I was not expecting that. Obviously, I think at face value, a lot of people see this offseason for the Bucs. It's they're going to lose a lot of talent. But they might be in a position if they release Brait, release Howard, and extend Donovan Smith, make enough money to bring back Levante David and Shaquille Barrett, and then, like you said, potentially makes even more moves in free agency to build up this team. This is a very good situation.
They can come close to running back.
Because right now, I think Super Bowl odds have the Chiefs as the favorite for 2021. But maybe the Bucks. Who knows? The Packers, absolutely not. Get out of here. All right, New Orleans Saints. Is this real? Minus $69.5 million in projected cap.
And it's not spectacular.
That is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Minus $69.5 million in projected cap space. And that doesn't get that much better even if the cap gets up to $188 million. You're still minus 61 in the can. And some free agency they could lose. One of the better safeties in Marcus Williams. Trey Hendrickson has played well for them along the edge. PJ Williams, Alex Anzalone, Jared Cook, Sheldon Rankins, Jameis Winston. Like, all those guys probably walk. Like, how are you bringing these guys back? So let's look. The cap casualties is probably the most important thing here for the New Orleans Saints because they need to get under the cap.
And also with these cap casualties, these numbers are just cutting them now. Now, you can spread, if you cut post June 1st designation, you spread that cap hit not only over this year, but over next year, which is what the Saints are just literally going to have to do. So these guys, so you can read off these numbers here, but just know that they could probably create a little bit more with some of these if they do that designation.
I think the more important figure here, a little bit,
like, it's still, you'd rather not do that because you don't want that cap hit into next year either, but it's what they have to do literally to get underneath the cap.
I think the more important part of this is the names. Like, these are the names that might be on the block here.
Yes.
Quan Alexander, who I think that's the obvious cut candidate. $13.2 million in cap savings. This one doesn't happen, but Taysom Hill, they could save $5 million. But Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill more than you do.
If he's their starter next year.
I was going to make a joke, but I'm going to jump out of that. Taysom Hill, $5 million they could save. Janoris Jenkins, the Jackrabbit, you could save $7 million there. Emmanuel Sanders is gone. There's no way they bring him back. He's at $4 million savings. Malcolm Brown at 4.9. The Tay Train, Latavius Murray at 2.5, and then Patrick Robinson at 2.6 million. Like, that together is $39.2 million in savings. That still doesn't even get you there. You're still not even over the cap there. This is going to be a tough offseason for the Saints.
What's the highest the team has ever been over the cap? Is it the Saints?
Well, like, you have to start the season.
Yeah, legally. Yes. Or what happens if you don't? Lose draft picks?
Yeah, I think it's fines and draft picks.
Can you even play?
I think you still can, though.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the Saints just go in and say, yeah, what's up? We're $30 million over, and we're going to lose our first.
We need to get a list of questions about the cap and then get Brad.
Yeah, PFF_Brad, PFF's resident cap analyst. We had him on our Sirius show, but we'll have to get him on the pod.
But there's not a path to the Saints getting under the cap that looks anything like them retaining the roster we saw.
Reloading.
Yes. It is a shedding. They have to. And the biggest thing here is they've had 9 total picks in the last 2 drafts. They've drafted 9 players the last 2 years. It was this year. This was their year. This was always going to be their year. And then it was the cliff.
Yeah.
They prepared all these contracts with all this void years and expected dead money, knowing this was their cliff, that 2020 was the last hurrah. And then Drew Brees' arm fell off. So, sadly, it has to be about the closest thing we've seen to like a Marlins fire sale in the NFL, where they not only have to cut all these guys, let all their free agents walk, they're going to have to trade guys in this roster that are good players. Guys like Marshall Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Cameron Jordan. They're going to have to part ways with guys who are not, like, we put cap casualties because these guys are maybe not necessarily key pieces. Guys who are key pieces to that franchise. So
big reset in New Orleans in routes. That's going to be, again, I keep saying this, and I think, maybe you could say this about every offseason. I do feel like this is one of the more wild off seasons to be. I do think, like, how much quarterback movement there's going to be, what the Saints are going to do. I mean, this is going to be an interesting off season. All right, Carolina Panthers. Better situation than the Saints, I'll say that. $31.1 million in projected cap space right now. That doesn't include retaining Taylor Moton, who is probably their big name free agent they want to bring back, at least on a tag situation. They could also lose Russell Okung, John Miller, Chris Reed, Rasul Douglas, Corn Elder, and Curtis Samuel this offseason to free agency. And then cap casualties, they already cut Quan short. Teddy Bridgewater, he's not in a situation. They'd take on a lot of dead cap if they cut him.
Yes, but they'd save $2.9 million.
They'd save $2.9 million this year. And then Justin Burris, you could save $3.8 million if they do release him. I don't think they release Teddy Bridgewater. There's just no way. It's too much dead cap.
That's the sunk cost fallacy. You're just describing what we just talked about.
No,
it's not because it's too much dead cap. That point is regardless of the decision that you have to make.
I'd rather have him as a backup. Have him as a backup before you cut him. Like, I mean, you're not getting anything. But
here's the thing: it's like you pay him this year, then he's counting against your 2022 cap, and it's what year is more valuable to you at this point. When you get that, you're going to get a rookie quarterback this year if you cut Teddy Bridgewater. If that's like your plan, you're going to go up. You're going to get a guy. You're not going to. Rookie quarterbacks aren't going to win Super Bowls, not with that roster. So you're playing for 2022. What's your best decision with Teddy Bridgewater for 2022?
I think that you need to, for 2022, you're saying? Yes. If they kept him?
The cap space, do you want the cap space 2022, or do you want a nice year of Teddy Bridgewater mentoring, say, Justin Fields?
Let me look into his contract a little bit more. I'm going to look for there's got to be a better way than cutting his ass for just $3 million.
And also, it was a different GM that signed him. It was Marty Herney signed him. It was not, you have kind of carte blanche as a new GM to come in and make decisions you think are best for the long-term health of the franchise. You're not going to get fired after 1 year if you suck this year as a GM. You just aren't.
Here's the situation, big dog. You keep him this year because you have to pay him $20 million no matter what. Might as well keep him as a backup. And then next year you can cut him and save $21 million. Next year you cut him, you only take on $5 million in dead cap, which is nothing. I don't think cutting him makes any sense. I don't know what happens if you trade him, if that contract's movable.
So if you cut him this year, though, you get $3 million in space this year. If you don't use that $3 million, it rolls over to next year.
Yes, that's fine. $3 million is nothing.
So that's an $8 million difference you'll have next year, which is a player you can add.
But they'll save $21 million if they cut him next year.
You're thinking about that incorrectly.
Okay. Either way, I don't think paying him $20 million to be released is a smart move.
I think it is. I think that's what's in the best long-term health of your franchise.
All right. Agree to disagree.
All right.
That's farcical.
What after cutting Teddy for a measly $2.9 million, what's the move?
After I cut Teddy Bridgewater, I think we kind of went into this on the mailbag, but you got to at least tag Taylor Mouton. He's too valuable of an asset when everyone needs offensive tackle. So I think try to keep him, try to extend him. Maybe pay Russell Okung and NBA Top Shots if he'll accept.
He's his own agent. Is that why you're saying that?
Yeah, and he also got paid in Bitcoin last year. That's why. So maybe he'll accept some new
Top Shots. Sounds like
for a discount. Yeah, it's like we're going to pay you in Top Shots for 100 Top Shots a year, and see if you accept that. That might be worth a lot. It might be a lot against the cap. If we
I think it's a bet. You bet on yourself there. I like it.
But yeah, Okung and Top Shots. Try to, and then I think bring in a vet linebacker. KJ Wright, Jayon Brown, someone like that, hopefully, because your linebacker position was gross last year. And someone to play alongside, I'm blanking on his name right now because I'm Shaq Thompson, because Shaq Thompson was lost without Luke Kuechly. So a vet there. And then if I am going to spend that cap space, which I don't love the idea of, because again, playing for 2022 here, that cap space rolls over if you don't use it. You don't have to use it. But I'd go cornerback. I'd go William Jackson, Shaquille Griffin. That's where I'd be in.
They have, $31.1 million, even if they don't cut Teddy and cut Justin Burris, that's enough to add some talent here.
Yeah.
But you're right in that they shouldn't just back up the Brinks truck, because regardless of who's starting, whether it's Teddy or a rookie quarterback in 2021, the only time I see them really going all in with that 31.1 is if they make a trade for Deshaun Watson. But even then, you're going to have to dump a lot of that money into Watson's contract or wherever happens with that situation. So it'll be an interesting offseason. I think they should be making power moves for Deshaun, and if not, definitely planning to draft a quarterback or move up even for a quarterback in the 2021 NFL draft. They can't afford to go in to next year with Teddy. Whether they cut him or not, we'll have to have the argument again another time. All right, Atlanta Falcons, last team here in the NFC South. Minus $20.3 million in projected cap space. Could lose Alex Mack, Keanu Neal, and former San Diego State legend DeMonte Casey in free agency. Some cap casualties. There's not a lot of options here to get under the cap. Dante Fowler at $3.2 million. James Carpenter at $4 million. What do they do to get under the cap here? They're going to have to make some trades?
Man, they're in a bad way right now, because they made Thomas Dimitroff stole from the future to try to run it back after they lost in the Super Bowl. He has Matt Ryan with cap hits of $40 million this year, second highest cap hit behind Ben Roethlisberger in the NFL. $42 million next year, and then $37 million the year after that. And they loaded up on the Julio Jones deal as well. It has a massive cap hit the next couple seasons that they just not only can they cannot move on from them. They're not saving cap space by cutting guys like that or moving on from guys like that. They're taking on more cap space. a la the Carson Wentz sort of thing that happened in Philly. So this, after the Saints and I'd say the Eagles right now, Falcons are in the worst cap situation I've seen going through all these rosters. It's bad. You can't add talent right now. This is not the year to try to reload via free agency, and not the year, in my opinion, to push money into the future. I think this is the year to draft a quarterback if you're going to, because the way that contract's set up with Matt Ryan, it's not that he's declining necessarily. It's that $42 million next year is just an absurd price to pay, and you're not at a point with where your roster is going to be able to compete with that money on in tow. So they're regretting deals like that Carpenter deal, like that Dante Fowler deal, that are paying those guys a lot of money to do basically nothing for them.
And some of their other big cap hits, Jake Matthews and Deion Jones, you can't get out of those contracts necessarily. You need to, and even if you trade them, you're taking on, I think, for both those guys, over $7 million in dead cap space. Like those, they're in a tough situation right now. They're going to have to get some restructuring going. They're going to have to make some cap wizardry happen to get under the cap and put together a winnable roster. Like continue to have a roster you can win with.
Shit, like you'll go back and look, Calvin Ridley, and then not a lot over the past 4 drafts. Not a lot of, and not just not a lot of high-end hits, and not a lot of depth either. Guys who aren't even, I can rely on that guy's starter. No, not a lot of guys like that.
Damn. All right, let's jump to the football team here. Right now projected at $38.3 million in cap space entering the 2021 offseason. Some free agency could lose. Brandon Scherf, a big name there, Ronald Darby, and also Reuben Foster. A potential cap casualty that's probably likely, even after coming off the Comeback Player of the Year award, Alex Smith. Saved $14.7 million in cap space there. Cutting Alex Smith, probably re-signing Brandon Scherf. That's probably the 2 biggest things. What do they do after that?
Yeah, I think you got to keep O-line. You can't lose pieces for that O-line. It wasn't good enough to lose pieces, especially when it's Brandon Scherf. So I think that's 1A on your offseason plan. Obviously, 1B is then quarterback position. This one, this one of all the ones I prepped, of all these teams I prepped, probably took me the longest because I don't know what they do at quarterback. I don't know what this team, I don't know what their best plan of attack is. Maybe a Cam reunion with head coach there, I'm blanking on the name again because I do this all the goddamn time.
Ron Rivera,
thank you. That's why Producer Quinn has the mic there. Ron Rivera, maybe a Cam reunion. I don't know what quarterback puts you over the top, though, with this roster is the problem. Now, you have the space to play. I think they are heavily in the Chris Godwin mix. If I'm going to say one team, if I had to predict right now that Chris Godwin goes to, that's what I would say, because I think he's best as that number 2 option. That is where he excels, where he can be flexible in his alignment. Got Terry McLaurin on one side, Chris Godwin on the other. I think that's a winning combo. But it's just the quarterback position. I keep coming back to that. I'm not sure. You're drafting too late to make a play at one of the top QBs, and you're not good enough that Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, other guys like that really puts you over the edge.
What about going after Sam Darnold? They get Chris Godwin. They grab Sam Darnold on the cheap. I'm not saying he's going to have this resurgence, but going after Sam Darnold, if it doesn't pan out, you're drafting a lot higher than you were this year.
I like that, actually.
I think Sam Darnold, the football team, is something I've seen. I've also seen Sam Darnold, the Patriots. Those are the 2 teams I see like Darnold mocked to.
No way Jets trade with Patriots. They'd be
foolish.
Can't.
Can you imagine the embarrassment if the Jets traded Sam Darnold to the Patriots and then Bill Belichick turned him into like not even like a Hall of Famer, but like a guy who goes to the playoffs. Like if Sam Darnold goes to the playoffs with the Patriots, I think Jets fans would be burning jerseys.
And the Patriots won, you'd be laughingstock. So that's not happening.
Yeah.
But the football team fit I do like, because it's a high variance play.
Mm-hmm.
That
similar to the Jameis play, but with some more upside. Sam Darnold's still only 24 years old.
Yeah, with some of that, everyone kind of gets horny when you got that unknown. Mm-hmm. What could he be if he's not playing with Adam Gase sort of thing?
I'm a big guy on the unknown for sure. All right, let's jump to the New York Giants here. They have right now projected cap space $0.9 million, a little bit over right now. Some free agents they could lose: Cam Fleming, Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson, Kyler Fackrell. I think Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson, for what Gettleman wants and what Joe Judge wants, losing those guys could be kind of big. Like they like to having the strength down low. Yeah. Cap casualties they can move on from: Nate Solder at $6 million, Golden Tate at $6 million. The interesting situation here is I still think they need to kind of throw the kitchen sink at the offense to try and figure out if they can win with Daniel Jones. Like again, we keep bringing
draft though. That's what you got to do that one in the draft this year. Like that wide receiver at 11, pencil that one in at this point.
Or Pitts.
Or Pitts at 11. Pen that one in if he's there.
Sharpie.
But then round 2, round 3, offensive line help, wherever else you can help your quarterback there. That's where I would go because the defense was not the issue last year. It was, pretty much it was the offensive line. So I don't know what necessarily you can do in free agency to help out that offensive line. You're not going to be playing with a lot of space. And you kind of you don't want to be, they were massive players last year, obviously signing James Bradbury, Blake Martinez, big money deals. Being massive players 2 years in a row is a dangerous game.
Yeah.
That's how you end up like some of the teams we just saw on this list. So I don't think this is the year to really go out and spend. If you maybe got an offensive lineman you like on the cheap, by all means, that's the only place I'd go in free agency though.
This will be an interesting one because I do think this is the year for Daniel Jones. Like, you got to show up this year, and especially if they add weapons in the draft and then try and build up even some small pieces in free agency. I think they're going to try and make this the year where they properly evaluate him. And if they're drafting inside the top 10 or fringe top 10 next year, I think it's time to move on, time to cut the cord. Dallas Cowboys right now projected at $19.4 million in cap space. They've got a wild free agency ahead of them. Dak obviously is a big priority. Xavier Rhodes, Chidobe Awuzie, and Jordan Lewis, all three guys in the secondary they could lose. Alden Smith, Joe Looney, Tyron Crawford, Andy Dalton, Quinn's favorite. Okay, Dak Prescott, let's start the conversation there. Is he a must re-sign to a long-term deal? Is he a must re-sign to a tag? Or is the best option a tag and trade?
Well, I think the biggest thing here, not the biggest thing, but a key point here is they don't have a lot of space they can create. They kind of have a set roster with new contracts that they can't create space. So they can't get a guy right now that can create over $3 million on his own.
Oh, wow.
Unless you post June 1st someone and then push that into future years. But they don't have a guy right now that can create $3 million of space on by cutting. So a tag for Dak Prescott in the mid $30 million that might be difficult to fit under the cap. You're gonna have to do some magic there to fit that tag under the cap. And so Prescott could call their bluff, so to speak, and just say, sure, I'll play under the cap. And they might have to gut that roster, not gut that roster, but do some bad decisions that you would not want to do normally to create that space for a Dak Prescott to fit that one big cap hit. Because if you get an extension, you can obviously have the cap hit lesser this year, more down the line. So that's going to be whatever happens kind of there with the Dak situation, whether it's they do tag him, he plays in the tag, whether it's they do find an extension and then they have some more space to play with this year, is going to dictate how the rest of their offseason goes.
What would you do? What would you do with the Dak Prescott situation right now? And what do you think is the most likely happening?
If they can get a tag and trade for a real pick with Dak Prescott, someone who's either, I don't know, the Dolphins at 3, someone sitting there where you can get a quarterback on the cheap because you're paying too much money to the rest of this roster is the problem right now. You got a roster that's good at too many places, old at too many places, and being paid at too many places, that if you add the quarterback to being paid on that list, you're SOL for the next 3 off seasons about in terms of adding any free agent talent to that roster or retaining talent to that roster.
Hear me out. I got an idea. Mm-hmm. Social team, cut this. What about Carolina? I know that's not a move. I know pick 8 isn't one where you're going to be in on the quarterback class, but Carolina, as we've heard, multiple rumors, they're trying to get aggressive at upgrading over Teddy B, trying to go after Deshaun Watson, trying to trade up for Justin Fields or Zach Wilson. What about a tag and trade to Carolina and then leveraging the number 10 pick and the number 8 pick to try and come up and go get, a top guy like Zach Wilson or Justin Fields? What is your opinion of that?
I would love, that's what I'm saying. If you can get a real pick would be anywhere else in the top 10. That to me, I think that's a sneaky,
by all means, I think that's a sneaky possibility. Like, as we continue to hear about Carolina trying to make a move at quarterback and maybe Deshaun Watson doesn't pan out, they don't want to trade 5 first-rounders or whatever it has to be, I do think Dak Prescott could be an option for them.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is because Dak Prescott is going to want $40 million a year. That's what he's going to want. He's going to want Deshaun Watson money. Mm-hmm. He has not had a season close to what Deshaun Watson did this past year. Even in this past season, with all those weapons, the best weapons in the NFL, in my opinion, 80.6 passing grade. That's like that. That's your cap. You're going to have a cheap roster around him to win, and you're not going to have that anytime soon.
All right, let's go ahead and move forward now to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in a similar situation to the Saints in that they have a lot of negative cap space, negative or minus $42.9 million right now in projected cap space and free agents they could lose. Jalen Mills, Nickel Roby-Coleman, Jason Peters, Vinny Curry. They're probably going to have to get out of some of these contracts, some cap casualties here or potential cap casualties. Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham, Marquise Goodwin, and Zach Ertz. You could save probably close to $20 million cutting all of those guys with Derek Barnett at the biggest figure at $10 million. Is this just a complete rebuild? Like, yeah, they already moved on from Carson Wentz. They're probably getting a first rounder in 2022 if he does play all the snaps we expect him to in Indianapolis. Do they just completely tear this thing down and rebuild?
I think you have to.
Or because the other option is this. The other option is like, no, we can win with Jalen Hurts, and they try and make some moves. They try and make some power moves to build around Jalen Hurts.
No,
you just can't. Like you can't. Like you don't have the horses.
It's too bad of a situation, and then they're too old. Like they are too old right now. Brandon Graham, 34. J.C. Kelsey, Ertz, obviously.
Jeffrey is going to be released.
Jeffrey's, I think you got to release. There's going to be released. There's too many guys that are too old that are your core of that roster. We're the core of the Super Bowl team and have been the impact players to where you got to pay old guys. Like they got to pay those guys, and they're not getting cheaper, and you're not going to be able to create space unless you move on for them. And are they going to be, and you just won 4 games last year is the other thing. You just won 4 games. Unless you got Deshaun Watson, you're not going back to the playoffs with whatever quarterback you're getting next year. At that point, are you really going to rely on all these mid-30s guys to run you back to the next time you're ready to go to the playoffs? I think it's got to be just...
I go back and forth on what they should do at 6, because a lot of me thinks that if a Trey Lance does fall to them, they should swing the bat on Trey Lance and try and get in on this quarterback class. But, you know, the more you talk about it, the more you feel like they're not, you know, they maybe need to get in on 2022, because the quarterback you bring in at 6, even then, is like entering a situation where it's not going to be good for a while. I don't know. What's your opinion at 6? What do they get in on the quarterback class? Do they get a Trey Lance if he falls, or do they sit on it, try and build up around Jalen Hurts, and if he doesn't pan out, then get in on 2022?
Yeah, I don't think you trade up. I would not be mortgaging picks to trade up because of how, like I said, bad this could be.
Yeah,
like I'd be shedding where I could in terms of cap space.
And I mocked that. I mocked them trading up. The more I think about it, I do think that it's better to wait and see if you can get a Trey Lance at 6, and if not, best player available. Set expectations low. You know, you're probably winning 4 to 6 games next year, and then get in on a 2022 class with an extra first rounder potentially if Carson Wentz goes to the playoffs.
Oh yeah, that would be that's what I'm like. That's then your window is after you get all those picks, this draft capital, and then, like I said, you could be in the 2022 class for one of those guys.
All right, let's jump to the NFC West here. Seattle Seahawks right now are projected at $4.4 million in cap space. Free agents they could lose some names here. KJ Wright, Shaquille Griffin, Ethan Pochich, Nick Bellore, friend of the pod, good friend of the pod, special teams legend.
Pro Bowler this year.
Absolute legend on special teams. He also got death threats for when he like twisted CeeDee Lamb's knee or whatever. That's insane.
You're sending me those. Those are hilarious.
And Carlos Dunlap is a cut candidate at $14 million in potential savings there. How do the Seahawks get over the hump? I know Russell Wilson's unhappy, doesn't want to get hit anymore. Is there a way the Seattle Seahawks can be like up there with the Packers and Bucks in the NFC? Like, can they be like the third or fourth best team in the NFC?
Yeah, I mean, so after Carlos Dunlap, I don't think you're keeping them at that figure. So you're going to have around $20 million to play with. You're going to have space. But I don't see how you can't let Shaquille Griffin walk. He was your best corner in a bad secondary. You need...
I just think Shaquille Griffin's underrated.
And you don't only need Shaquille Griffin as the problem. Like, you need Shaquille Griffin and someone. So if you can make it work with another one of those free agent cornerbacks that we talked about, you know, William Jackson, being out there, someone like that, that's your dream. That right there is what is your dream off season, is adding a legit cornerback across from Shaquille Griffin. I don't think anything else is really moving the needle for you. Maybe interior offensive line. There's not a ton of super talent out there, but
you're telling me
like a big name wide receiver.
You're telling me re-signing Nick Bellore is not going to move the needle for them?
Okay, that was a must. That was a must add. Like a Pro Bowler, you can't just let a Pro Bowler walk out the door.
Do you want your special teams unit to just completely fall apart?
No.
You got to re-sign Nick Bellore. It's a must. All right, Los Angeles Rams at minus $34 million in projected cap space. Not an ideal situation for them. Some free agents they could lose. John Johnson, who I think is going to have a decent market on the open market. I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in Leonard Floyd, Austin Blythe, Troy Hill, Gerald Everett, former South Alabama great guy who torched my San Diego State Aztecs in his heyday. Cap casualties, Michael Brockers could be on his way out, $4.7 million in savings. And then Tyler Higbee, who the fantasy community was all about this offseason, did not necessarily pan out that way. He's got $2.7 million in savings if they do cut him.
Yeah, I think you're translating pretty much everything you can for Aaron Donald. $19 million base salary this year. That's all going to be signing bonus. That's all going future. That's going to be a handful of guys on this roster because they don't have any other way. They don't have any other way to get $34 million in space to clear that money with the roster they have right now and like the contracts they've signed. Matt Stafford as well. You're just pushing some money down the road. And they're in a dangerous game right now. They are the Saints probably 2 or 3 off seasons before the cliff. Like that, when you don't have, and now they won't have their next 3 first-round picks now after this. They got 3 years, I think, with the way this roster is constructed. And it might not even be that long because you're not adding. You can't add to this roster right now. This is the problem with dealing away all that draft capital. This has to work for you to justify all you gave up for Stafford and all you've paid all these guys. So you're not adding anyone to this roster, sadly, and you're going to have to kick space into future years.
2 more teams left here before we jump to the interviews with Dyami Brown and Osa Odigihizuwa. Arizona Cardinals right now projected $11.8 million in cap space. They could lose a ton of guys in free agency or retirement when looking at Larry Fitzgerald on this list. But Patrick Peterson on his way out, Devondre Campbell, Kelvin Beachum, Hassan Reddick, Dre Kirkpatrick, Larry Fitz, the legend, Larry Legend, Marcus Golden, Kenyon Drake, J.R. Sweezy, all those guys could be on their way out.
So it's interesting. Like all those guys are contributors. I don't think they necessarily.
No, they don't. Yeah, I mean, maybe
besides Patrick Peterson, who has admittedly fallen off a little bit, there's not one guy who's like,
you got to bring him back.
Yeah.
You got to bring him back. Yeah.
So,
Larry Fitzgerald is a legend, though. If Larry Fitzgerald is playing football in 2021, he better be on the damn Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to let a legend like that go.
Yeah. How sad would that look if he's on
Pittsburgh? He wants maybe go back to Pittsburgh. I don't know. Either way, they lose. Juju Smith-Schuster, we'll see. Cap casualties they could get rid of and make some more space. Chandler Jones at $15.5 million, Justin Pugh at $7.2, Robert Alford at $7.5. Those are 3 guys with over $6 million in savings potentially. Of those 3, who do you think is the most likely they maybe release or make some moves on?
I think Alford's probably gone. Jones, it's already been talk about trying to either change to bonus or get him taking a little hit for this upcoming take a little pay cut because he has, like I said, $20.8 million cap hit this upcoming season. That's a lot. Obviously, a good player. It's bad business, in my opinion, to be cutting good players, just getting rid of good players. But you got to make space where space is on a premium this offseason. So I think they'll do whatever they can to keep Chandler Jones. And then you have a little bit of money to work with. I think they should be in the free agent cornerback market, maybe for a budget guy, kind of like they were with Dre Kirkpatrick last year. Name I highlighted here, Gary Conley. Had his injury histories, was coveted for like a 3rd-round pick only a year and a half ago. Former first-rounder, and they have been, the Arizona Cardinals, kind of a team very much in favor of reclamation projects. They've had their fair share over the years, so I think that's a possibility for them. I also think they could be in the wide receiver market. I would like to see them in the wide receiver market because they don't just need 1. They need 2, in my opinion, outside of DeAndre Hopkins there. I don't think that Andy Isabella is obviously going to turn on in year 3. They just don't even use him in there, even though he's, a speed threat. It just doesn't fit that offense. And then I think they could be, if they want that speed threat, though, Will Fuller, Rashad Perriman, another team that would be in the mix for guys like that. And then I just wrote down here, I can't believe Jordan Phillips counts $12 million against the cap this year. I just can't believe that they signed that deal. Jordan Phillips counts $12 million against their cap.
That's massive.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
And they can't really cut him because they just signed it last year.
They're an interesting spot. And I think Cliff Kingsbury, I would argue, is on the hot seat at the very least. I mean, there was higher expectations for him and Kyler Murray. And then they added DeAndre Hopkins. Like, there were high expectations for the Cardinals this year.
Yeah.
And they're like a Hail Mary against the Bills away from, like, really this season looking bad. They don't win that game. This season looks, I think, a lot worse than where they were. And I think the Arizona Cardinals need to show up. A lot of players, or I think specifically Cliff Kingsbury, is on the hot seat. And I think he needs to make some power moves to make this offense cook. Since he's joined the Cardinals, they've ranked outside the top 15 or even top 20 in EPA per play offensively. Like, this has not been a good offense since Cliff and Kyler have taken over. And I am of the opinion that it's not Kyler's fault. Like, some people are pointing fingers at Kyler. I do not think Kyler is the primary reason the Cardinals offense isn't cooking.
Yeah. I mean, dude, Steve Kylen is the Teflon Don there for the Cardinals. His draft history, you want to see some of his first-round picks? He started in 2013. His first rounder was Jonathan Cooper, tone setter. You get that guard, bust. Second first rounder was Deion Buchanan. Third first round was DJ Humphries, then Robert Nkemdiche, then Hassan Reddick, then Josh Rosen. He made it 6 drafts. Is that 6? Or was that 5? Whatever. He made it that far without hitting on a first rounder. I don't know how.
DJ Humphries has played well for them.
On his second deal.
Yeah. I guess he didn't hit.
Yeah, that's not a hit on a first rounder. You can go sign Trent Brown. You don't need to spend a first rounder to get a guy who turns it on in year 5. And then Kyler Murray, when he owned the number 1 overall pick, and then Isaiah Simmons is past. Like, his draft history has been the fact that he's not the fact that he hasn't been in the hot seat. It's kind of,
dude. It's save your job season in Arizona, and if it's not, it better be.
If he was in, and I don't like this argument usually, but if he was in New York, if he was in a bigger market that got more press, he'd be out. Like,
really,
that would be talked about.
I think that's so also much. A fair take. Yeah. All right, last team here, San Francisco 49ers, $13.4 million in projected cap space. They could lose some guys though. Richard Sherman probably on his way out. Trent Williams, Jason Verrett, Kerry Hyder, Kendrick Bourne, DJ Jones, Ahkello Witherspoon, Kyle Juszczyk. Like, they don't have a lot of corners. Like, they lose Sherman, Verrett, and Ahkello Witherspoon. Like, they are going to need to make some moves at corner. I think they have to re-sign one of them, right?
Yeah, you got to keep Verrett. I don't think a lot of people are going to be clamoring for the guy with his injury history.
Any other? What about Juszczyk? Got to re-sign Juszczyk, right? I mean, he's a tone setter.
Tone setter. No, just draft Tommy Tremble.
There you go. I do like Tommy Tremble.
Draft Tommy Tremble. But the cornerback position is like one. You can't. That's what got you to the Super Bowl back in 2019. Yeah, it was Kyle Shanahan's offense, whatever. But what won them the number 1 seed was their cornerback position.
They were playing lights out.
They were lights out.
And they had a good pass rush. I mean, Nick Bosa obviously wasn't hurt, all that stuff.
But that was the biggest difference year on year. So keep that cornerback position, hopefully. And then Trent Williams, you want to re-sign Trent Williams. Trent Williams is fucking awesome.
Yeah, he was awesome.
I don't know what he's going to take to sign him. I'd pony it up. That offensive line, it needs a cornerstone piece that you can rely on. And especially with how valuable I think their offensive line is for that run game, I'd re-sign Trent Williams and I'd cut Jimmy G's ass. Yeah.
That's where the conversation starts for San Francisco. Cap casualties, they could save $23.6 million in space if they cut Jimmy G, D Ford at 5.7, Wes Richburg at 4.5. Let's start with Jimmy G.
Yeah.
They have to trade or cut him. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they have to. I don't think they'll find a trade partner. Although, I didn't think the Eagles were going to get what they got for Carson Wentz. Desperation is a real thing. So maybe they can, but you can't have him on your roster at over $20 million next year. You just can't. When you saw the
lack of a drop-off is the biggest thing I bring up. Like between Jimmy G
and
Bethard and Nick Mullins, yes, there was a drop-off, but it wasn't that significant. That's the problem.
$26 million
exactly.
Worth of
and I think they would be better off moving with one of those guys or making a play for this in this draft class. Like, I do think that moving on from Jimmy G is where it starts for San Francisco.
I agree. And what I would do, I'd make that play in the draft. You're Kyle Shanahan. You haven't had that guy. You haven't had that guy. You had carte blanche kind of coming in with the contracts they signed, him and John Lynch. With the contracts they both signed, you had carte blanche, and you never got your guy at the most valuable position.
Go get your guy.
Exactly.
Trade a future first and a second. Go up and get Zach Wilson or Justin Fields. Go get your guy.
And
if it doesn't work out,
because again, he's like roster's too good and you're too good of a coach to bottom out. You're not going to be in a situation where you're going to be picking for one of the top guys. So go make that big move.
You already have pick 5.
Yeah, go up to pick 5. Go trade with the Cincinnati Bengals. You know, if Fields or Wilson falls that far, go get him. Also, I think the proverbial cheat code is having as good of an offensive coach as they do in Kyle Shanahan, because he doesn't count against your cap, and he automatically, like you said, you're not going to bottom out with this roster and this coaching staff. Like, he automatically lifts the floor of a lot of quarterbacks coming in, and we saw that when Jimmy G has missed time. Like, we've seen that with other guys who bring in. Don't continue to lean on that, though. That's the problem. Don't continue to lean on Kyle Shanahan propping up bad quarterbacks. Let's see him prop up a legitimate talent. Let's see him prop up Wilson or Fields.
You've been putting lipstick on a pig for too long.
Give Kyle Shanahan not a pig,
on
a Mustang,
dime.
a dime. Oh, I guess I probably could have gone human. I didn't have to continue in the horse, but
yeah, I was gonna say, you got a fetish there. We're talking.
Put lipstick on a dime. Let's end with that, man. And this has been a fantastic episode on the NFC and the AFC stuff for sure. Looking at each one individually. Let's jump now to the interviews with UNC's Dyami Brown and UCLA defensive tackle Osa Odigihizuwa. Joining 2-for-1 Drafts is former UNC wide receiver Dyami Brown, one of my favorites in this class, a guy that was a massive field stretcher at UNC there with Sam Howell this past year. Dyami, it's great to have you on the pod.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me.
You're out there in Phoenix right now, enjoying the sunny weather close to the West Coast, working out at Exos. How has that been? How's the experience with Exos been so far?
Man, it's really wonderful. Training-wise, it was a little tough start, just trying to get down every technique for every drill that we have for the combine, 40, the vert, broad, the bench, just learning new things and stuff that I didn't know already. But it's been a great experience, even, meeting the players that's here, wonderful players, great players that's, involved in the combine as well. So it's been a great experience so far.
Who are you working out with out there? Who's your workout buddy?
Elijah Moore, actually, matter of fact.
Nice, man. Nice, very cool. Elijah Moore was on this podcast a few weeks ago, man. He had some good things to say about A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, another talented receiver in this class. And I've heard that Exos is holding like their own pro day in late February, and then also, people are going to their own pro days. Are you participating in that? And when is your UNC pro day?
So the Exos combine is actually next week. I'm not participating in that one.
Gotcha.
But I will be participating in the pro day, which is March 29th.
Gotcha, man. Very cool. It's going to be an interesting off season, dude, with the combine being canceled. Going to be meeting with a lot of teams on Zoom calls. Have you talked to any teams so far? Are you scheduling those interviews now? What's that process look like for you?
So I do have a few upcoming, scheduled interviews, but I had a few so far.
Gotcha, man. How are you preparing for a Zoom interview? I'm going to try and prepare you my best here. I'm going to ask you the tough questions here. We're asking you the tough questions on this podcast. One of the first things I wanted to ask you was specifically about your role at UNC, a very high average depth of target, a very high yards per reception. You were downfield, a very vertical route tree at UNC. Talk to me about that experience and playing, so far downfield all the time. Like, you were stretching the field for UNC with Sam Howell. How was that experience for you?
Man, it was actually a great experience. Coming from high school, we deep balls all the time.
Oh, really?
We had fast receivers. Me and my brother. We had a couple of tall receivers. So deep threats was normal. We did all the time. It's like our favorite routes. So just fitting in the system with Phil Longo with that offense right there, and having Sam, being able to throw the deep ball, it was just automatic. And you can't go wrong with it.
It definitely looked automatic this past season. Talk to me more about Sam Howell. I mean, Sam Howell is honestly being considered one of the top quarterback prospects in 2022, had a really good season this past year, and probably going to get a lot better as he moves forward. What's your opinion of Sam Howell? Give me the scouting report on him.
Oh, man, he's a great player. He took the time during the offseason, extra time in the field room, at least 8 extra hours, and you wonder where he's at, but you always know that he's in the office watching film. But, scouting him is hard, because he knows the ins and outs of the game. He knows who we're playing, where we're going against, the defense. He studies it all the time. So that's just one accolade that he has that, is different.
A couple other players at UNC I want to get your opinion on, and on the offensive side of the ball. Daz Newsome, a guy that played like quarterback, running back, wide receiver, everything in the world in high school, and then goes to UNC to be a standout receiver opposite of you. And then also the two backs, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, the two-headed monster at UNC, also in this draft class. I need it all, man. Give me some good stories from those teammates. A very talented group at UNC.
Man, Daz, I'm gonna start with Daz. He actually came in to play corner, and it's crazy.
Wow.
You know, I was still getting recruited at the time, but I saw him against Louisville. It was a game opener. It was the first play at a jet sweep and went for at least about 60-some yards. And I didn't know who he was at first. I was like, dang, he gonna be nice. So then, just going there and playing with him, and you see, unbelievable stuff every day. He does something, outstanding daily in practice. You never know. Like, it's like, when was he able to do that? Like, where is this coming from? And he's just a hard worker. And then them two-headed monsters that you talk about. Oh man. Words can't even describe how good they are. Character, them boys right there work hard daily. Mike, he's a vocal leader. He brings the energy every day, regardless of what it is. He's just going to be him. Vontae, big guy, and I really like watching Vontae run. He runs guys over, and it excites me. It brings extra juice to the team as well. So those guys right there are amazing players.
Let's focus back on you, Dyami, because I think, I can tell you what I like about your game all day long. Love the vertical speed, love the vertical route tree, what you do downfield. But tell me what you think separates you in this class. What makes you a difference maker in this wide receiver group in the 2021 draft?
Me, I feel like I can separate myself by making a short route easier to run. Going deep so many times, a DB expect me going deep every time until I'll push vertical, make them open their hips, and then shut it down. I think that's something that I have in my bag, man. Just being able to, read a defense as well, because I'll go from safety to corner or safety to linebacker to corner, just to read a defense. But I think that's what separates me the most.
What kind of film preparation do you do in a given game week? What are you looking for on film when you're looking at an opponent or looking at an opposing corner? What are you looking to identify in those weeks leading up to the game?
So I just try to look at basic tendencies, alignment, alignment for each formation, or, if it was 3-by-1, I was in the boundary by myself, I see how they would like to play me at most of the times, but it'll just be basic tendencies and coverages. That's it.
And who are some of the tougher cornerbacks you went up against playing in the ACC, playing at UNC?
For me, it would be Asante Samuels. He was probably one of the toughest DBs that I went against. He's very instinctive, knows how to play the ball well. Even though he's a short corner, he still, plays like he's a top corner that's going to be in the league.
Yeah, I mean, Asante Samuel Jr. does not play like he's small. That's for damn sure. He's got some crazy tape. Okay, you said Daz Newsome played corner a little bit. Who wins one-on-one with him playing corner, you versus him? Who are you taking Daz to the house, or what are we talking?
I'm automatically winning. If it's 1-on-1, I'm winning every time. It really doesn't matter who lines up. I could play corner and beat him every time.
That's incredible. That's awesome, man. So are you setting any goals for yourself working at Exos? Are there certain drills that you're like, hey, I got to hit this number. And I'd be interested to know what weight you played at this past season and what weight you're working to get to right now at Exos.
For now, drill-wise is really the agility, the 5-10-5 and the 3-cone. I want to run a very good time, at least about a 6'4", 6'5" in the 3-cone. At least about a 3.9 in the 5-10 shuttle. And then, because those are tremendous times that you can run, but those are the drills that I've been working on the most. So, And then as far as my weight, I've been playing at 192 for like the past 2 years. So I want to at least try to get at least to like 195 to 200, be around that range.
All right, I have one more question for you because you mentioned the weight, and I think I recently talked to Sean Wade, an Ohio State corner that went up against this guy, and everyone has this opinion on Devontae Smith's weight. The Alabama wide receiver that just won the Heisman. Right. He played the season at like in the 170s or low 180s or whatever it was. What is your opinion of like that being a knock for him in this class, not having enough weight, being too slim to be a true number one at the next level? Because Sean Wade doesn't think it matters. And I think you playing even at the 190 range at 6'1", it kind of speaks to this like it being overrated. What's your opinion of Devontae Smith's game and this whole conversation around his weight?
Man, honestly, man, I think the weight doesn't matter at all. It's all about skill level and how much heart you have and all the other attributes, that can go along with playing receiver. Of course, you want some weight just in case it like to prevent injuries, but playing wise, I don't think the weight is necessarily important.
Okay, I lied. I had one more question. I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk to you about what will likely happen in the NFL with an expanded route tree. Some of the knocks that I've heard about your game is that you didn't run a ton of different routes, and you didn't have to. To be fair, you got open on a lot of the deep routes. And I had conversations with Brandon Ayuk, the former Arizona State, now San Francisco 49ers receiver. His knock was that he didn't run a ton of routes either, and now he's playing in Kyle Shanahan's scheme and running the entire route tree and doing a damn good job of it. How do you take that question about, hey, when you get an expanded route tree, how do you expect to have success? Do you work on routes a ton in the offseason? I'm interested to know what your opinion of getting an expanded route tree in the NFL is going to be.
Yeah, so right. Yeah, I was limited routes, with the offense that we ran. But even in the offseason, I work on every route there is, every angle to catch a ball, whether it's an out curl, dig, slant, all those other routes that you might have to catch, moving around in different route tree. I work on all of that during the off season. So then, when it comes down to it, it'll be easier for me instead of just running the same routes that I've been running the whole time. Because your brain has to get used to running every route. So during the off season, I train and do every route, and just so I can get a better understanding and knowing how to run each route.
Well, I look forward to seeing the entire route tree from Dyami Brown in the NFL. I wish you the best of luck moving forward, man, and really appreciate you coming on the pod.
All right. Thank you.
Joining the 2-4 Drafts podcast is former UCLA defensive tackle Osa Odigihizuwa. Osa, great to have you on live from California, man. It looks sunny and beautiful over there. You're living the dream.
Yes, sir. It's good being here. Thank you for having me. Weather's been pretty good lately. It's raining just a little bit, but it's nothing compared to what you're going through in Cincinnati and people in the Midwest and the Northwest right now.
It's awful, man. I mean, Cincinnati has one of the worst snowstorms it's seen in a long time. I'm trying to stay hunkered in the studio, but it's great to have you on. And how far is the Exos facility from UCLA's campus?
Like an hour and a half.
Oh, okay. Not bad. Who you hanging out with down there? Who's working out in that facility?
A lot of guys. So Kadarius Toney's down here, Felipe Franks, Donnie Corley, Evan Thomas, Cyrus. I'm not sure how you say his last name. He's from Fresno. Okay. Austin from U of O, Levi Onwuzurike from UW, and Jalen Phillips, one of my good friends from UCLA and Miami. So
yeah, Jalen Phillips is awesome, man. I mean, he's a guy I talked about recently with Gregor Rousseau, the Miami, Florida edge defender who's in this year's class. Who's your workout buddy? Who's your partner in crime in the weight room right now?
It's Jalen. We typically live in the same rack.
Okay, so you're not putting up more than him, or is there a little competition there? What are we talking?
I mean, I feel like I definitely got him in the weight room. He's faster than I am for sure, but I definitely got him in terms of max output.
There you go. So what are you working on right now specifically? Are there any goal weights you have right now? Are you goal times, 40-yard dash? Are you looking to hit a certain mark in the 3-cone, broad jump? Do you have anything bannered up right now as goals?
I know what's good for those drills. I can't rattle them off the top of my head, but I know where I'm aiming for sure.
What weight did you play at this past year?
I played at about 275, but typically my playing weight is 280.
Gotcha. And have you had any have you had any conversations or early conversations with NFL teams at what weight they like to play you at, or what positions they're thinking about you? Because you could obviously go through a different, married to different things, playing shaded on the center, more 3 technique. What conversations have you had? What feedback have you received?
A lot of people see me as a 3 tech.
3 tech. Looking at this past year and really the last 3 years at UCLA, looking at PFF's grading, one of the more consistent run defenders we've seen. And I think speaks to the floor of a defensive tackle prospect like yourself, a guy that can control line of scrimmage, a guy that can play the run. It's not something, though, that is as coveted in today's NFL or even in college. It's all about the passing game these days. How often are you repping run defense in practice? And is it a big part of your game? Do you see it as a strength for you in this class?
I definitely see it as a strength because if you can't stop the run, then you're not going to get to pass rush. You know what I mean? So have a saying is stop the run, have some fun. You know what I mean? So before you get after the quarterback, you have to stop the run. So that's definitely, I say, is equally as important.
How do you think you developed as a player in the years that you were there at UCLA? Where do you think you got most better, and what do you think really outside of run defense separates you in this class?
I feel like just my ability to rush the passer, use my hands. I feel like I'm pretty dominant at that. Get a consistent amount of pressure on the QB every game. So I feel like I do a good job of pass rushing. I'm one of the better interior pass rushers in this draft class.
When you're thinking about, and I think it's when you're talking to edge defenders and even defensive tackles about pass rushing, there's this, this concept of a pass rush plan, pre-snap, having a primary move and counter in mind. What are you looking at pre-snap, and what are you thinking about when you're setting up your pass rush plan or working a certain move, how that kind of develops over the course of a game?
Well, I'll have kind of an idea of how a guy's going to set just based off of film. And then just from there, we're playing the game. So if he's giving me his hands, which I like a double puncher, then I get to work a finesse move, an edge move. But if he's more patient, then I got to set up my finesse move with power. And I would say my bread and butter is typically power, but I can get you with a forklift, or just if you're giving me your test, I'll just take it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And so I've talked to multiple pass rushers who say you only need one primary move and then a counter. You work those two moves, maybe a third move, and you're in a good place. Well, there's other guys who are like, I want a tool belt. I want everything under the sun. I want to be able to pull off any move you've got. What is your mindset there? Do you look to have 1, 2, 3 moves mastered, or are you trying to get as many moves possible, really flex that tool belt, so to speak?
I would say it's 3 base moves, but just from those variations of the same move. So it's if you're doing a chop, you could do just a regular chop, rip, arm over, chop, club, arm over, or a cross chop if you're going inside. If you're hitting a swipe, it could be a swipe or a counter swipe, and then a move after that. So if that doesn't work, I typically just go to a long arm and collapse the pocket. So, and then the long arm is you could take a bull rush straight to it. You could go 2-to-1. You could lift it. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of different ways that you can hit the same move. So I like to be able to just kind of do it on the fly, but I have 3 base moves that I'm going to hit.
I think that's a great way to think about it too, because you want to have these 3 base moves, but it's almost more important to have variations off your primary moves than it is to have completely different moves, like a spin and these different things, rather than having, hey, I can beat you with power, and I can beat you with power with variations of this primary move, which I think is very interesting. You brought up film. I'd be interested to know how much film you're watching in a given game week, and what exactly are you looking at when you're looking at an opposing offensive lineman or an opposing offense? And then in that same manner, how much film do you watch on yourself or your own defense in that game week or even in the offseason?
I like to watch a lot of film of myself because I'm very critical in that regard. I'm kind of slow to give credit to an O-lineman. I'm was he really good, or was there something that I could have done? Let me watch the film and find out. So I watch myself a lot. And as far as what I'm looking for, I like to look at formations and just tendencies based on where they're lining up and what my coach can give me. I'm very reliant on my coach when it comes to getting tips and helping me play faster and just getting in tune with the game plan. I like to get tips from him, ask him what game to watch, and just see if he has any cut-ups that he can make for me to just look at. So it's not super long, but it's seeing what he's seeing, you know what I mean? And as far as when guys are run blocking, I look to see if their feet are gaining ground on their first step, if they're stepping under themselves a lot, and what their hands are doing. So some guys, the better O-linemen, are going to have tight hands, where it's most an average O-lineman or a slightly above average O-lineman is going to give you his chest right off the line in terms of runs. So that just lets me know how it's going to go as far as run blocking. So if he's giving me his chest, I got that window of time to just get my hands in him and get extended. And then, like I said, just seeing if he's patient with his hands, double punch, or is he as far as how he sets.
And how does that shift in the offseason? Do you watch film on NFL players or other talented college players to kind of pick up tools and stuff like that?
I like to watch a lot of NFL film.
Who are some guys you watch?
I like to watch Aaron Donald, Sheldon Rankins. There's a lot of different guys for moves that I do. So my coaches would just make a cut up of a move that I like to do, and there will be a bunch of different guys hitting it. Aaron Donald, he's famous for that cross chop, but he also hits a swipe pretty well. Bull rush. DeForest Buckner is pretty good with a chop, club, arm over. Chandler Jones has a nice chop, long arm. DeMarcus Lawrence has a nice cross chop. Yannick and his cross chop is nice. Shelby Harris has a good bull rush. Just watching a bunch of different guys that work the same move and seeing the consistent technique. What I like to call it is priming my brain. So awesome. I can watch it and just kind of get ready to make those same movements. You know what I mean?
How much Osa Odigihizuwa are you watching? I know your brother, man, coming out of UCLA I was a huge fan of his game coming out, and I know he had a ton of success at UCLA.
I mean, I don't watch it too much of him. I watch it just because he's very athletic, explosive. His activity from whistle to whistle is something that I like to emulate. But I'd say we have slightly different play styles. His run technique is good. I feel like as far as hands and making distinct moves, I'm a little better than him in that way.
That's funny, man. The other part, what I found interesting about your background, in addition, Osa Odigihizuwa playing in the NFL, the rumor is, or not the rumor, but the report is that you never lost a single wrestling match in high school. Like 4 years as a wrestler, you did not lose. That's what I found. Is that true?
I lost 9 matches my freshman year, and then I went undefeated for 3 years.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So I know there was this big matchup, I think, between a Hawaiian kid, right? Was it Aloha High School's Cortez Rodello, where you won with a 1-point escape? I need to know about your wrestling background and all the success that went into that.
I wrestled for like 8 years. So I started when I was 10, just practicing because I would just walk over to the middle school and see my brother practicing when I was waiting for our mom to come pick us up. And it just looked so fun. So I begged him, like, could I please practice with you guys? He said, you got to go get your physical, get it signed off by a doctor. So I did. And then I was able to practice, didn't get to compete, but I just, was passing time rather than sitting on the side and watching. So that's kind of where I started when I was in 5th grade. And then I knew I was going to join the wrestling team as soon as I got to middle school. So my first year of competing was when I was 11, and I did that all the way through high school. Did it mainly like kind of year round because we went to camps in the summertime. We did freestyle, which is kind of like more in the off season. So that's kind of how I got successful, is because I was never really rusty. I was getting better constantly. So when I started to apply that same mindset to football, that's when I started to find a lot more success in football as well.
Do you ever wrestle any of the guys at UCLA? There's got to be some matches going on. You can't be the only former wrestler there.
No, I wasn't the only one, but definitely the best guy.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, dude, you didn't lose for 3 straight years, man. That's crazy. I wrestled in high school as well. I'll tell you what, I did not have that good of a record. I also wrestled in like the 99s or whatever. I was a small kid coming in high school. Before we let you go here, I wanted to finish with this. I really appreciate the time, Osa. You're probably going to get this question a lot in this process, but I'd like to ask you too, why do you love football, and what do you think you bring to an NFL team at the next level?
I love football just because it's a fun game. It's a good outlet for your aggression. I couldn't be out here playing basketball or something like that. I need a contact sport. That's why I did football. That's why I did wrestling. So I like to just impose my will on guys physically. It's a good outlet for that. Just being with a team is fun, getting to know guys, becoming a part of a band of brothers and being part of something bigger than yourself. So I feel like I'll bring a hard work ethic and just a good energy to a team. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm.
Be careful what you said about basketball, man. You talk to some real basketball players, like, dude, it is a contact sport. You can't say that. No, but I agree with you, man.
It is. I respect basketball. I respect all athletes and the stuff that they do, but, it's not the same.
It's not the same. No, I agree with you, man. I'm just giving you.
And I'd say there's more. The saying I think of is like, there's more football players that can play basketball than there is basketball players that can play football.
I agree with that. That is very, very true. And I think a lot of that is because of that mentality you have to play with. Like, you can't go through the motions in football. Like, you can go to the YMCA and do a pickup game of basketball with random people. You can't do that with football full padded as you do in college and so forth. So I definitely agree with that. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. We'll have to get you on again soon, and best of luck moving forward.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Dyami Brown, man, he's my guy. I love how honest he was and how transparent he was about the offense at UNC. He ran a lot of deep routes. He has, since we've been grading college football since 2014, the 2nd and 4th highest average yards per reception in the history, like single seasons, like in the history since we've graded. He moves downfield, wins downfield. And Osa, he solved some mysteries for me. So I thought he was undefeated in high school as a wrestler. He lost a handful of matches as a freshman and then never lost. And he said he doesn't wrestle any guys at UCLA, which is unfortunate. I thought they had some matches there, but 2 fantastic interviews for sure. We got a handful of really good interviews coming up just to tease the future here, on 2-for-1 drafts. After these, Elijah Molden, Marlon Tuipulotu, Jalen Darden, Jamie Sherwood, Boogie Basham, Patrick Surtain, Christian Darrisaw, Javonte Williams, Rashad Bateman. We got some guys coming on the pod that will be an absolute treat. And I will say this, that Amari Rodgers interview, you could tell this kid is a coach's son. Like, he is one of the smartest players I've talked to this year. And I really do think that's going to lift his floor in the NFL, especially with his self-awareness, understanding how he can win in the slot. He compared himself to Cole Beasley, which I thought was interesting, but also watched a ton of film on some other guys. But that one's going to come at a future date. Until next time, fellas, make sure you like, subscribe, rate, review, whatever you can do for the podcast. Please do it. Austin Gayle, producer Mike Quinn, Mike Renner, 2 for 1 Drafts.